Greetings and welcome back to Doctor Who Revisited, my ongoing series where I go through every single Doctor Who episode from 1963 all the way up to 2022 and review them. And yeah, I was wondering when I will get to one of these. So this next episode I'm about to talk about is called The Massacre, or in its full title, The Massacre of St. Bartholomew's Eve. One of the longest titles in any Doctor Who episode. Still to this day, as a matter of fact. Well, I didn't really mention this in previous installments of this series particularly, mainly because I was just too distracted with just how enjoyable the last couple of episodes I've been reviewing have been. Well, especially the Daleks' Master Plan. But Mission to the Unknown was special in more ways than I've mentioned. It was the last Doctor Who episode produced by Verity Lambert. That was her exit from the show. As producer and somewhat of a position that today, in these days, would be considered showrunner. And boy, oh boy, her absence is sorely felt in this episode. She is really, really missed in this episode. Thankfully for us fans, she managed to set the ground to keep the ball rolling enough for the Daleks' Master Plan to be as good as it was. But once that was over, we're treated to this story, The Massacre of St. Bartholomew's Eve, or The Massacre. I'm just going to call it The Massacre just because it's shorter and it's easier for me to pronounce. Who did they make this episode for exactly? Seriously, not me, but who did they make this episode for? So it's another historical episode. It's a return to the classic model of sci-fi historical. Sci-fi historical. It's not good. I mean, hey, maybe there's some people out there in the world who like this episode. I am not one of these episodes. Really, the only interesting part about this episode is the Abbot of Amboise, or Amboise. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. He looks exactly like the Doctor, and he's played by William Hartnell. And that's it. That's really the only main draw for this episode. Other than that, it's a very Stephen-heavy episode. I mean, it's just, it focuses on Stephen, and again, goes back into a problem that I said earlier of giving William Hartnell less screen time because of his health condition, and I get it, I understand it. The guy was ill while he was filming it, so they had to rewrite the script around him to be more serviceable. And the scripts that they came up with were not good. We're starting with one of the most useless characters in Doctor Who ever, Stephen Taylor, just bumbling his way around Paris, making friends and enemies, sometimes being the same people, and just trying to navigate through a medieval era France, I should say Paris, right before the Huguenots Massacre. Now, the Huguenots Massacre, or as it's more accurately titled, the St. Bartholomew's Eve Massacre, is not something that I knew about going into this first time I watched it. And it's something that I'm not really 100% sure what was the deal with still to this day, even after rewatching this episode 3 times and actually reading a bit of history on the Wikipedia page. It's a pretty generic story by today's standards. I mean, us humans, we're good at that. People are different from us. Let's kill them all. How many times has that been done in history? And it's one of those times that Doctor Who just decided to make a historical episode about. Now, we already have precedent that was set up in The Reign of Terror, the season finale for season 2, where Susan mentions that the French Revolution was, or rather is, this Doctor's favorite period in human history. I don't know why. but it just is. And this is a few hundred years prior to that, still in France, and the Doctor is actually really, really excited to be in France in the 16th century, meeting some German scientist named Preslar. I can't remember what his name was. And then that storyline just ends. Like the Doctor goes to visit him, and is never heard from again. And he even after telling Stephen to wait in the tavern for him, he'll be back. And then, as the Doctor usually does, he loses all track of time, which is pretty uncommon thing for a Time Lord to do, I would imagine. I would be interested to one day learn what the hell the Doctor was doing during this whole time away from the episode. But yeah, by the time the first part of the serial ended, first time I watched it, before I knew what was going to happen, first time I watched it, I was half asleep by the time the Abbot of Amboise showed up. And when it shows up and it's played by William Hartnell, I was like, ooh, okay, this could be interesting. This has potential. And then the other two episodes just drag. And I noticed it even more in this rewatch. This episode really does not get better with age. It does not get better with time. It's one of those rare episodes of Doctor Who that I wish I had the guts to skip during a rewatch. I never skip any episode when I'm rewatching seasons of Doctor Who because I'm a purist and a completionist. So I suffer for my art, ladies and gentlemen. I suffer through episodes like this. Especially this time because I'm reviewing that for people's view, entertainment, whatever. But yeah, this is one of those episodes where I just wish I had the guts to skip. I can name a few others, which we'll get to eventually on this series of rewatches and reviews, but again, I'm not a fan of Stephen Taylor, and this episode features a lot of him in different scenarios where every single thing he does, I'm like, yeah, Ian could have done that better. Barbara could have done that better. Vicky could have done that better. The Doctor could have done that better. And it's another showcase of the uselessness of that character. And I don't really know what to tell you. And the one of the main cliffhangers is that this guy played by William Hartnell is dead. And I talked a few episodes ago on this series that Mission to the Unknown is the only episode that does not feature the Doctor in any way. Completely forgot about this episode, probably for good reason. But yeah, the Doctor is a complete no-show for 2 episodes because William Hartnell was playing the Abbot of Amboise, which we were led to believe, at least Stephen did, that the Doctor was impersonating the Abbot, doing some stuff, even though everything that the Abbot does and everything he's heard about the Abbot is something completely un-Doctor-like at all. None of these things are things that the Doctor of all characters would do, especially the first one. And yet somehow he still holds firmly to the belief that the Abbot is the Doctor. This episode could have gone so much better if they just leaned into the whole double identity thing, where the Abbot and the Doctor were both being played by William Hartnell at the same time in the same episodes, as opposed to trying to lead us on this wild goose chase that the Doctor could be pretending to be the Abbot, even though all evidence to the contrary say otherwise. But somehow they tried to make a good episode out of this. That's all really I'm going to say. And I feel bad about this because I think it's the last Doctor Who episode that was ever written by John Le Carrotti. And he wrote one of my favorite episodes from season 1, Marco Polo. That's how you do a good historical episode. Oh yeah, that was his last episode. And and obviously, elephant in the room. Really, I'm finally getting to that point. But yeah, another missing episode. Maybe if some of the parts of the episode would survived, I would have felt differently about this episode. But I don't. One positive I can say about the episode is that the costume design looks really, really good. Really just outstanding. Daphne Dare, I believe, is the costume designer. Daphne Dare did a wonderful job with period-accurate costumes at the time. And just overall, the historical accuracies in this episode and just the Doctor Who episode in general is always on point, always spot on. Just doesn't really mean that the episode itself is ever going to be good. None of the characters are really likable, especially the Queen. I guess well they're not really supposed to be likable characters. That's the whole point of the story. But no part of the story ever is engaging or interesting, and it's just a drag to go through. And I wish I could have skipped this, but I don't, and I probably never will. Whenever revisiting these seasons and rewatching them again. What else can I say about it? Well, just like the Reign of Terror, in my opinion, things really do pick up in the final episode once it's revealed that the massacre, that it's all circling around the 1572 massacre. But again, who did they make this for? And that end part where you're actually seeing the massacre, I wonder if they actually showed people getting slaughtered in the streets, or did they just do what they did in the recreation, where they just showed artwork from that time of people getting murdered in the streets in their thousands. And this is on a kid-friendly family show of all things. I get that sometimes history is ugly and you gotta show that the other side of history sometimes. I wouldn't necessarily think that an episode about the Holocaust would ever fly well with some people, and certainly not this one. But maybe in a more adult oriented show, adult oriented. You know what I'm trying to say? Adult show like Torchwood, maybe that would fly, but not in Doctor Who, which is weird. But then obviously, like I said, it picks up when we learn that this character, Anne Chapelet, is actually a ancestor of future companion Dodo Chaplet, one of the most annoying characters from Doctor Who ever. And even more so in this episode because he somehow adopts this weird accent that she has for her debut episode and just completely drops it in her next appearance. Not really sure. I don't think there's any other expanded media stuff that explores if the Doctor, Stephen, and Dodo actually did travel and had more adventures in between the massacre and the next episode we're about to talk about. But yeah, something must have happened to the accent. Maybe the showrunners just weren't keen on her speaking that way. Whatever the case was, I did not like this episode. Focuses too much on the most useless character from this era, and caps it off by introducing the most annoying character from this era, even more annoying than Susan, in my opinion, because at least Susan has a character. But and it also just shows you a massive religious war where thousands of people were killed in the streets. I don't know what else to say about it. I hate this episode, so I'm just gonna end this here and move on to a far superior episode in the next one. So thank you for watching if you have, and let me know if you actually do care for this episode in the comments. I'm actually interested to hear people's thoughts. Goodbye. Hi there. Thank you for watching the video. And if you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and tell your friends. I'll see you next time.